Ace your exams, tests, and quizzes. 34 test-taking strategies for top grades, time efficiency, less stress, and academic excellence. Written by Peter Hollins, narrated by Russell Newton. Let's start at the very beginning, the planning phase. If getting a good grade on a test is your ultimate destination, then having a study plan is a roadmap to get there. If you've ever studied for tests in the past and felt like you ran out of time to fit everything in, you'll know exactly why the most important first step is to budget how many hours you have to work with. The truth is, you actually begin studying for a test from the very first day you take a class, or even before. Preparing for a test should ideally be a natural extension of the focused work you've been doing with that subject all along. Done right, studying is more like revising, since if you planned ahead, you'll already have taken useful notes, reviewed them, done homework assignments and practice, and made summaries as you went along. The final days and weeks before a test are when you gather everything together and make sure you're prepared for what you'll face on exam day. You need to answer two basic questions. What do I need to cover? How much time do I have available? Sounds basic, but many students find themselves in trouble because they fail to answer one or both. Be warned, answering everything to the first question and as much time as I can humanly squeeze in is a recipe for disaster. You need to be specific. To decide what you need to focus on, you may use a guide or outline given to you by your teacher, or you can consult past papers to get a feel for the scope of what you'll be tested on and to what depth. The first question is not just about content, though. It's also about how you'll be expected to show your understanding, i.e., the form your questions will take. Again, past papers will give you an insight, but you can also think about the kinds of exercises and homework you've practiced throughout the course. We'll look in more detail at different study techniques in later chapters, but essentially, you'll be dividing up your available time on different study tasks. These tasks could be reading, making summaries of what you've read, like mind maps, memorizing details, like making and using flashcards for key terms, worked practice, such as with geometry or algebra problems, completing past papers. Once you understand everything you need to cover, then you can look at how much time you have and how to budget this time strategically. For example, you may be studying for a biology exam. Based on your teacher's guidance and the formats of previous papers, you understand you need to cover chapters 4 to 8. You start by making a list of all the tasks you need to complete. For example, read through all the chapters again, make summarizing diagrams of processes, and complete practice questions at the back of the book. Then you make an estimate of how long each of these tasks will take you, being generous. How do you know how long you'll need for each task? Well, you can guess, for one, or you can use what you know about yourself from previous study sessions. The most accurate way, however, is to actually measure it. For example, do a test run where you read a half chapter and time how long it takes you. Then you multiply this by 8 to get an estimate of the time needed to read all 4 chapters. It may seem like this extra step wastes time, but in fact, it ensures you don't waste time later. Now, the exam is in 3 weeks. After tallying up how much time you need for each task, you can look at your calendar and start to schedule everything in, leaving enough time for breaks and unexpected changes. You draw up a plan of exactly what you're covering each day and how much time you're dedicating to that task. It's simple, but it works. You know exactly what you're meant to be doing and when. It can calm your nerves if you know that As long as you follow the plan, you will get it all done and be prepared come exam day. You're now empowered to rearrange tasks a little when plans change, without interfering with the overall strategy. If you know you'll have a big distraction happening on Tuesday, for example, you can comfortably schedule around it so you don't feel pressured to squeeze everything in. You're less overwhelmed. You don't need to think about anything other than what's in front of you for that day or study session. This gets you more focused and more relaxed. One of the two biggest rules for effective study are 1. Plan ahead, and 2. Spread out your tasks as evenly as possible. That means that the earlier you start, the more time you have to put together a plan that will work, and the more time you can spend on each task without stressful cramming. So many of us procrastinate when we're feeling overwhelmed. We look at the massive pile of work to do, and we're exhausted or intimidated by how difficult it will be. But this kind of procrastination tends to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we put it off, the bigger the pile gets, and the scarier it looks the next time we muster up enough motivation. Think of a study plan as a way to reduce stress and make things easier on yourself. Even still, things may not go according to plan, and we may have to fit more into a shorter time than we'd like. That's not a problem. If you only had a week, 3 days, or just a day, you can still follow a condensed version of the same process above. Identify the most important material to focus on. Decide what tasks you need to complete to study this material. Decide how long each task takes. Then schedule those tasks in the time you have available. Simple. The less time you have, the more you're going to have to focus on the most important material and skim the rest. Finally, here's one key tip for the days just before the big exam. Don't forget to take breaks and sleep. Your brain consolidates what it's learned and revitalizes itself during sleep. The last thing you want is to turn up to a test groggy and forgetful because you're sleep deprived. Start your revision early. The saying goes, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The same can be said of studying. The sooner the better. You need to give yourself enough time to properly cover everything you need to study, as well as time to revise, work through any snags or problems, or ask for help. We've all done a little last-minute emergency cramming, but the truth is that you're not likely to get very good results, unless the results you're seeking are sleep deprivation and extra anxiety. The ideal situation is to have engaged with your work so consistently over the course that exam prep time is just a matter of review. But what exactly is early? Most courses will have their exam date known at the very start, at least in general terms. As soon as you can, get a sense of the entire curriculum ahead of you and when the exam will fall. You want to have at least a month revision and study time before the big day. This obviously depends on a few factors. Start early if you have a heavy workload with many separate courses running concurrently. Start earlier if this is a subject you have particular trouble with. Start earlier if this is a make-or-break major exam. You don't have to wait until you've officially finished all the set coursework before you start revising. You can make summaries and study notes for each section as you finish it, or complete only the relevant sections of past papers. This will go a long way to reducing feelings of overwhelm as test day looms closer. Generally, You want a study plan that looks as smooth and flat as possible. It's always better to aim for 2 months of revision where you do 2 hours a day instead of 1 month where you do 4 hours a day, or trying to do everything in 3 days and attempting to bend the laws of physics so you can squeeze in 40 hours per day. The more separate study sessions you have, the more time you have for revision, correction, and repetition, and the more time your brain has to consolidate memories and learn through reiteration. Likewise, you have more time to identify any mistakes or areas of misunderstanding and correct them. If you've been a diligent student throughout your course, it may simply be a matter of replacing the normal time you spend every week on homework, activities, and reading with revision. The best time to start thinking about exams is the first day in class. This way, you are proactively making notes and summaries that will later serve as revision materials. If you keep up to date by regularly clearing up misunderstandings, asking questions where you struggle, and consolidating step by step, you won't have an awful lot of new ground to cover come exam time. Maintain good study habits. To do really well in your exams, you don't need to be a genius or lucky. You don't need to be superhuman. All you need to be is consistent. Excellent students know how to make use of habit and incremental practice. Funnily enough, schools rarely teach students any detailed study habits or techniques for use outside the classroom. Left to figure this out for themselves, students can end up sticking with poor methods simply because that's what they've always done. Once you have a study plan in place, you want to have a fixed routine that you don't waver from. You want to find out where to study. Choose study locations that are low in distractions but not dead silent. The coffee shop effect is real. Slight background noise can actually help you concentrate better. The only hard rules are to have adequate lighting and proper seating so your posture is supported. Planning itself should be a regular habit. At the start and end of every session, day, and week, quickly orient yourself and see what you've done and what you still have to do, as well as any adjustments you might like to make. Make ample use of diaries, calendars, and to-do lists. Just pick one method and stick to it. The more structured and organized you feel, the more in control, the less stressed, and the more confident. It's not just about the content, though. Make time for contemplation and reflection, and use a journal to record your thoughts and feelings about the process more generally. Some students like to have a little ritual that helps them tune out distractions and focus on the study session ahead. Make a routine of putting your phone or other device in another room, closing the door, hanging a Do Not Disturb sign on the door, putting on noise-canceling headphones, or making yourself a cup of herbal tea. Install software that allows you to block off social media or other internet sites, or go completely offline to avoid distractions. Turn your phone to silent so you can ignore any concentration-destroying notifications. Technology can be your worst enemy here, or it can help you if you use it wisely. There are now countless apps to help you keep track of your schedule, tune out distractions, or even just time your study sessions and keep track of your progress. Daily study habits are all those small things that feel inconsequential in the moment, but add up to big results. It's a great idea to end every session with a proper eye stretch and rest, for example, to prevent strain. Blink, gaze into the distance, and take a few moments to look left and right, up and down. Because self-care and general health are so important for your academic success, one of the best things you can do for your grades is to keep up a good exercise schedule, consistently eat enough nourishing food, and sleep properly every night. At the end of every study session, make a point of tidying up your desk. This will help keep you organized, but even more importantly, you'll be sending your unconscious mind the message that this space is important and that you are taking proactive control over the learning process. To the same end, you can make your study zone extremely comfortable, peaceful, and personalized. Use aromatherapy, candles, important keepsakes that inspire you, or plants to create a space that you'll enjoy being in for hours every day. Time your study sessions for when you're at your personal best and most energetic, and build in plenty of breaks and rest periods. If you start early and plan well, you'll have plenty of time to accommodate any illnesses or last-minute changes of plan. One final habit you might like to try is to begin every study session with a quick affirmation. This doesn't have to be anything cheesy. Simply close your eyes, focus your attention, and visualize yourself completing the session ahead of you with clarity and determination. Try a mantra or affirmation like, "Every day I get closer to my goals," or "I've got this." You'll be amazed at how big a difference such a little thing can make. Identify your preferred learning style. Different people learn differently. You've probably already experienced the idea of different learning styles before. But is there anything to it? The most likely answer is that each of us can find our own unique strengths, weaknesses, and interests when it comes to studying, and enhance those as much as possible. Second, how we learn depends on what we're learning. We have different preferences based on the subject at hand. The learning styles theory gained prominence in the 1970s, but has since been questioned by educational psychologists, teachers, and neuroscientists who say there may be far less variation in people's study approaches than we first thought. How many different styles there are and how best to support them varies slightly with each theory, but broadly, there are the following types. The visual type. Those who prefer to learn by sight. They do best when things are converted into the form of graphics, diagrams, charts, maps, flashcards, tables, and mind maps to grasp new concepts. The auditory type. They learn through listening or hearing. They like information to be presented vocally and retain information when in the format of group discussions, verbal repetition, recordings, or mnemonics. The reading and writing type. The written word is their medium, and they manage new information best when conveyed via reading or writing. The kinesthetic type. They learn by touch, movement, and physicality. Information needs to be represented with physical models, tactile materials, experience, and hands-on practice. Some theorists have mentioned the difference between abstract and concrete thinkers, or between divergent and convergent thinkers, i.e., those whose thinking is expansive and exploratory, rather than geared toward narrowing into conclusions. Others, like Honey and Mumford, claim there are activists, pragmatists, theorists, and reflectors, according to their thinking and working style. Gregork and Butler differentiated between sequential, i.e., linear and logical, versus random approaches, i.e., multi-directional. And there are many more types and models. The fact is, the scientific evidence on learning styles is not considered particularly strong. And even though people may show temporary preferences, these can and do change. Furthermore, an innate strength is different from a preference. One thing to consider is that preconceptions about your learning style may actually limit your potential. This is especially the case if what you consider your learning style is really just a bad habit you've picked up that is actually working against you. Should you bother trying to adjust your study techniques to better accommodate your learning style? Well, the jury is still out. In the meantime, it's probably better to think in terms of maximizing your strengths and supporting or working around your weaknesses. Ask yourself some of the following questions to see what you can practically do to better support yourself. Are you comfortable with abstract theory, or do you prefer concrete examples and hands-on practice? Do you prefer working in an organized, step-by-step fashion, or do you like being more random and chaotic? What information format feels most natural and comfortable for you? Notes, diagrams, recordings? Do you like to find your own solutions to problems or be guided by someone else who knows? What's the kind of content you find easier to work with and why? What technique, approach, or mindset really doesn't work well, and how can it be avoided or adapted? The above questions will uncover preferences and not necessarily innate strengths, but adapting your strategy so it feels more comfortable may indeed make you more effective in the long run. More importantly, these questions allow you to engage in a little metacognition, that is, thinking about thinking, and help you learn better ways to learn. It can be wonderful to remember how much scope you actually have when it comes to the way you take in, analyze, and memorize new information. If a certain textbook isn't working for you, for example, you can try another one. Don't be afraid to go online and find explainer videos of people approaching the material from a completely different angle. You may discover that simply having someone with a different background or personality talk about, say, differential equations suddenly makes everything easier to understand. The old thinking was that if you were an auditory learner, for example, that you had to try and convert all written material into an audio recording. But this kind of strategy is unlikely to be worth the effort. And it's a good idea to remember that most people who have done even a small amount of formal education have a basic degree of comfort with written material. What's more, there simply isn't a realistic way to imagine how a kinesthetic learner may engage with higher-level material like economics, pure math, or comparative religious studies. If you're unsure of your learning style, or have never given a second thought to the way your material is presented, chances are there's no problem. It's worth continually thinking about how your brain thinks, though, and doing what you can to work with it. Try to have as many different formats for information as possible. For example, create detailed written notes that make liberal use of color, symbols, shapes, and diagrams, and supplement that with recorded and audio material, as well as plenty of worked practice problems and real-life examples to put everything in context. No matter your learning style, this will consistently give you a more three-dimensional appreciation of new material and provide your working memory more handles for retrieval later on. Lastly, be flexible and try not to put yourself into a box. You might gravitate to a more active, engaged learning style one day with one topic, but find yourself perfectly happy with just plain written notes the next day with a different subject. There's no need to force something that isn't working. If you're struggling to keep track of details in a difficult paragraph, don't keep on with it. Just switch up your strategy and draw a diagram or table with the same information in it instead. Whatever works. Create an exam checklist. You've made your plan for how you'll study in the weeks and days leading up to your exam, but you also need to think about how you're going to get organized for the exam day itself. Like a morning routine, your exam checklist will make sure you arrive at your exam feeling prepared and confident without any last-minute anxiety. Do a mental run-through of what the exam day will look like, from the moment you wake up to the moment you put your pen down and time is called. Then, make a list of everything you need to bring with you for the test and get it sorted out the day before the exam, or sooner if possible. For example, your list might look like this: pencils and a sharpener, pen with spares in a few different colors, rulers, erasers, calculator, list of equations, any special instruments, sweater, water bottle, tissues if you need them, small quiet snacks if you'll be in the exam for a long time and you're allowed them, your student card, student number, or similar, a watch or something you can keep time with, glasses if you wear them, a map or address of the exam venue with instructions to get there, a face mask or hand sanitizer if needed. Bring a bag that's small but still big enough to carry what you need, and be clear on the venue's phone policy before you head into the exam hall. Most exam venues will not allow you to have your smartphone on you, while some will ask that you switch it off completely or leave it at the back of the hall. If you rely on your phone for your time, it's worth investing in a cheap wristwatch instead, just in case. Think twice about bringing any lucky items or trinkets, even if they seem innocuous to you. If it's not 100% necessary for the writing of the exam itself, it's better to leave it at home. Finally, make sure that you give yourself enough time to head to the bathrooms just before you write your exam. Nervousness can make for overactive bladders, and the last thing you want is to be distracted during the exam with needing to pee. Gather practical exam details. While you're busy packing your bag, make sure you're prepared in other ways too. Double and triple check the exam venue, date, and time, and confirm any instructions you've been given. If it's a new location, sort out your travel plans, and don't trust Google Maps entirely. Even better, if you're able to visit any new locations ahead of time to familiarize yourself. Check what you'll be required to bring to show proof of identity or course registration, and bring any necessary books or notes if the exam is open book. Also, make sure that you know what to do if something goes wrong. You might, for example, be ill on the day or get held up on the journey, and you need to know who to contact. Set a morning alarm to wake you up with 1 or 2 backup alarms if you're known to oversleep. In the weeks before the exam, compile a list that you can add to every time you remember something new so that on the day you're making no new decisions, but simply running through a plan. The night before, don't cram or do any intense studying, but do a little revision and get a good meal with enough sleep that night. It might even be worth taking a break from studying in order to relax. Check the weather forecast and lay out the outfit you'll wear in the morning, pack your bag, charge your phone, And make sure you have your wallet with any coins you might need for parking or public transport. Should you do any serious revision on the exam day itself? If you have a morning exam, you likely won't have time. But if you have an afternoon or later start, try to resist cramming too much and tiring yourself out. If you must, go through a few condensed notes or run through some drills or spaced repetitions. Whatever you do, avoid hanging around with other students and comparing notes, fears, or how much you've covered. This will just freak you out. In the morning, make sure you're budgeting plenty of time to get to the venue. Better to arrive 45 minutes early than 10 minutes late. Have a light but nourishing breakfast and go easy on the coffee. If you're relying on public transport or have a long way to go, make sure you have a few backup plans if the unexpected happens, with plenty of time for traffic or other delays. You need to know where you'll park, the building you're in, and how to get there. Sometimes students can waste a lot of time when they realize it takes 15 minutes to locate the exact exam hall in a massive complex. Just before the exam, take a deep breath, say a few affirmations, and listen very closely to any instructions. Double-check the paper is the right one, and carefully note the time. You've made it this far. Well done. Now's the time to relax, focus, and remember what you know. This is the subject of our next chapter. Don't skimp on proper breaks. Perhaps you know of a fellow student who goes all out when studying. If the recommendation is to do 2 hours at home for every hour of lecture time, they'll do 3. The night before, they'll cram and do several uninterrupted hours at their desks late into the night. They may feel like they're being a hard-working Uber student, but the truth is that this kind of study strategy is unsustainable and will most likely lead to burnout pretty quickly. Do you need to study hard and put in the hours? Of course. Do you sometimes need to push through walls of procrastination or whip up flagging motivation? Absolutely. But if you want to pass that upcoming test, and subsequent tests too, you need to drop the idea that breaks are something that detract from your efficiency in studying. Many people think breaks are something we do when we're already exhausted and have no choice, or only rest when we're so burned out that we retaliate with procrastination and laziness. A healthier mindset sees breaks for what they are, a necessary part of the learning process, and a non-negotiable part of any test-taking strategy. In other words, you'd be a fool to think that downplaying breaks will somehow give you an edge or help you advance more quickly. More often, it's the opposite. Think about it this way. Does a person who trains in the gym 24 hours a day have an advantage in strength over the person who trains only 1 hour? A study from researchers at the University of Illinois examined participants doing a difficult task for 50 minutes. They found that the group that took breaks actually had more mental stamina at the end of that period than the group that didn't take breaks. Though we've all been taught to keep distractions to a minimum, it is important to give your brain a chance to rest. Your brain is a physical organ that runs on glucose, and it can become fatigued from overuse, just like any other body part. Your mental and cognitive resources are not infinite, and the only thing that will recharge them is genuine rest. If you take a break, your memory, energy levels, concentration, creative thinking, problem-solving capacity, efficiency, and stamina will all improve. When you're drawing up a study schedule, you should think of rest breaks as equally important blocks. These are the times when your brain is strengthening everything you actively learn. Here's how to use breaks in the best possible way. Take a break roughly every 50 to 90 minutes, depending on the task. More strenuous or intensive tasks will tire you out more quickly. You don't have to watch the clock like a hawk, though. If you are truly fatigued and find that your brain is mush, take a break. Similarly, if you're in the flow and can comfortably keep going without losing focus, then do that. Break for around 15 to 20 minutes between each study session. Any longer and you may find yourself struggling to get back into things, but too short and you're not properly rested. Various techniques have different guidelines for break frequency and length. For example, the Pomodoro technique suggests a 5-minute break every 25 minutes of activity, with a longer 15-minute break after 4 25-minute sessions. It's up to you to experiment with what works best for you. You may need to change your approach depending on the subject you're studying, or go a bit easier on yourself on those days you're tired or under the weather. As a rule of thumb, however, it's best to avoid going beyond 90 minutes, as very few people will be able to maintain a useful level of concentration beyond this point. No two people are the same, so pay attention to how your break schedule is working for you and make adjustments as necessary. Make the best of your break by completely switching off your brain from the task. Get up, stretch, take a deep breath, and move your body. Get yourself a drink or a snack. Go and chat to a friend, or do something enjoyable. You could also have a quick mini nap, or take a moment to just meditate or relax outside. Go to the bathroom, do some relaxing eye exercises, or enjoy a few silly YouTube videos or music that can help your brain switch off for a while. Take a walk around your home and do a quick tidy up or a little housework, or else have a nice refreshing shower. It's always a good idea to get away from screens, laptops, and phones. Perhaps the biggest hurdle for diligent students is to genuinely rest during this time. There's no point in having a break if you're still thinking about your work and still stressed about it. It may take practice to drop any feelings of guilt around taking breaks, but don't let anything intrude on your downtime. You shouldn't spend your break watching the clock or feeling awkward about not doing anything useful. If you notice any intrusive thoughts or worries popping into your break time, scribble them down somewhere and set them aside, telling yourself that there'll be time later on to address them, but not now. If you're spending time alone, let others in your home know what you're up to so you're not disturbed or interrupted. Takeaways. No matter what kind of test or exam you're trying to pass, preparation is key. You'll need a solid study strategy that will help you stay focused and effective. The very first step is to familiarize yourself with exam dates and decide exactly when you need to start studying. The earlier, the better. With an early start, you have time to ask for help, time to revise and complete practice tests, and time to come to grips with any difficult material. Though you should ideally be studying the first day of your class, aim to start preparing intensely for exams about a month before. Students who excel are those that have consistent daily and weekly habits. This includes securing a suitable location to study, with good lighting and seating, as well as having a daily routine that includes review at the start and end. Stay tidy and organized, and keep appraising your plan to make minor adjustments as you go. There is insufficient evidence to support the idea of learning styles, but you may nevertheless have a preference, when it comes to visual, auditory, written, or kinesthetic formats. A great idea is to mix them up and use multimedia for a more three-dimensional understanding. Create an exam checklist ahead of time, so you bring along everything you need on the day, and double and triple check the practical details, such as the location, the date, and the time. The more prepared you are, the less stressed you'll feel. Finally, every study plan should have ample room for proper breaks. Try stretching, naps, a walk, a snack or drink, socializing, a hobby, or just quiet time to let your brain rest and recuperate. Take a break every 50 to 90 minutes and make it roughly 15 minutes long, according to the subject difficulty. The Pomodoro technique is 25 minutes work with a 5-minute break and 15-minute breaks after every 4 sessions. This has been Ace Your Exams, Tests, and Quizzes, 34 test-taking strategies for top grades, time efficiency, less stress, and academic excellence. Written by Peter Hollins, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2021 by Peter Hollins. Production copyright by Peter Hollins.